Hi, this is Kim Pinkney and welcome to my channel. Well, today is 11/14 and I decided I was going to do some quick sketching and coloring, and I wanted to experiment a little bit. I'm using right now, let's see, what kind of paper is this? Canson mixed media paper, and it's good for pencil, pen, marker, acrylic, and watercolor. And what I want to do is I want to do Crayola colored pencils, Crayola crayons, and Crayola markers in this book. Oops, that's my time to... Alright, sorry about that. That's my clock that says, yeah, it's time to start drawing. Okay, so without further ado, I just wanted to introduce you to what I'm working on today. This is Elliot from The Magicians. Let me see if I can make this a little bigger so it's not as awkward. Sorry about that. Okay, and every day, I'm not always able to record. I'm usually really tired when I get off work. So what I do is I try to draw while I'm on the bus. It's kind of soothing, kind of gets me ready for the day. And Elliot, I had started on the stream, yesterday's stream. This one I had done on a stream. Let's see, I already discussed this one yesterday. And I was thinking about redoing her as a steampunk character. Maybe giving her the nice steampunk hat, like a bodice and things like that. Something steampunky around her. And then I'll end up changing the date or adding to this date. I worked on this one last night. I ended up getting home kind of late for myself. It kind of sucks because, like, when the bus has two bikes on it, I'm kind of screwed. So I have to wait for the next bus. And didn't want to do that, so I jumped on another one, which took me another few minutes to get home. So while I was on that bus, it was really well lit. So I was working on this one. And I kind of ran into a snag because I didn't know what to put on her. Pretty face, but I didn't know what else to do with her. So this one I had started a static shock. So this might be another one that I'll work on, you know, just to show darker skin tone. And love Static Shock. Missed that cartoon. Love, love, love that cartoon. So I'm just drawing another version of him, of Virgil. I started on Storm yesterday morning while I was on the bus. Was trying to get her hands right, trying to get the pose right. And God rest his soul, Stan Lee is gone, so he will be missed, especially as a cameo in some of the movies. But his contribution will never be forgotten. Alright, so that's my Storm, and I think that was it so far. I've been going back and forth. I wanted to be like other sketchbooks where people would add things to it. So I started doing like doodles on the side when I can't have my sketchbook in front of me. So I started, this one's another one where I was waiting for a bus. And it looks like I've got a little bit of crayon. When I do crayon, it gets everywhere. So I gotta be very careful. I might need to use a spray fixative. Here's another one I'll probably be working on. But I had done this one while I was waiting for a bus. This one I was trying to design another character, and pretty much just took some prompts and added it together and tried to create another superhero. I love strong women, and you don't see enough of them that look like, you know, barbarians. Like, they look like they're freaking strong and kick your butt. This was something I did for a little kid for his shirt. He wanted a little fire guy. And when I finished it, it had fire with little happy faces, sad faces, mean faces. They look like little demon guys. It was really cute. I can't say that often. But yeah, while I don't have too much going on, and I just take some scratch pieces of paper and I just start doodling. I never know what my next look is going to be or what I'm really after. And that's what I do when I don't know what I want to draw. Like, say I just want to draw a cute guy, so I'll just draw a cute guy. But it's not enough to, you know. Anyway, Nicki Minaj, I liked her outfit for a while, and then I'm like, you know what? Let me change that up. So I'm still trying to decide what I want to do with this outfit. Maybe she might become steampunk. This one I had done on another live stream, very long live stream, and let's see, this was an experiment. Now, what I want to do today is I want to overcome this, where you see the tooth of the paper coming through. And I was getting kind of frustrated. You can kind of see the white spots and dark spots and stuff. It's just like uneven mottled, ugly. And so what I want to do today is I want to go ahead and ink this in, and then I'm going to cover it with baby oil. And then I'm going to, I don't know if I'm going to necessarily do everything in this particular order, but I am going to coat it with baby oil. I'm going to treat my, what is it called, my Crayola markers like watercolors. And as soon as I get done inking, I'll go ahead and show you what I mean. What I'm using right now is a Prismacolor Premier marker. It's a .005. It's got a great tip. It's very tiny. And it gets me this really beautiful detail, really fine details. And right here I was using the brush version of this. Let's see, make sure I get his ears kind of symmetrical. Now I was just watching one video where one of the artists, Mark Crilly, was showing how to get your eyes to be symmetrical. And it was an interesting tutorial. And I didn't get to watch the entire thing because it's time to draw. And it's fun watching other people's videos, and that's another thing that I do. If I can't figure out what I want to draw, sometimes I'm inspired by other people's work. Like I was just watching another artist show off his, do a Inktober tour. And I liked his style. And there was one particular picture that he did that, I'm like, ooh, I want to try that. That technique. And what I liked is that he narrowed down his supplies to certain things. And with me, I drew on a t-shirt my Inktober. I wasn't able to finish all my images, and some of them I really just was not feeling the prompt at that day. But it was interesting because as I was watching this particular artist draw or show off his drawings, I'm like, you know what? I've got an idea for that prompt. Like now, the guarded that I did, I had done on the bus of Cerberus, the three-headed dog, as a puppy guarding his dish. And now that I think about it, like hindsight is like 2020. You come back to it and it's like, oh man, I should have did this, I should have did that. And I'm pretty much the same way. I started thinking, oh, I could have done it like this, I could have done it like that. Oops, this is the wrong one. I wanted my brush. There it is. This pen is pretty good. This was that pocket brush, Pentel pocket brush pen. When I want really fat, want to throw down some really fat lines, various line shapes, with a flick of the pen, I can really get some really interesting stuff. I apologize if I'm all over the place with my talk. I don't really have anything specific planned or anything like that. It's just pretty much just some of my thoughts as I'm drawing. But yeah, it's when I can't think of anything else to draw, I would look at other people's stuff. I would draw things that interest me. Sometimes it's a pose, Sometimes it's a face. And then sometimes I'll get all that stuff going, and then still the idea eludes me. Like right now I'm trying to decide, do I want to go thick lines, do I want to do thin lines, do I want to do a combination of both? And still trying to keep in mind that I will be coloring this. And depending on how I do my lines will make it look like whether it's a cartoony type thing or if it look more serious. So I'm kind of like torn. And then when I use my what is it called? When I use my crayons and colored pencils, I don't know if these lines will get in the way. So I don't know. It's kind of like a toss-up. You kind of got to plan what you want to do, and I got that from Mark Riley. And in general, what you want to do when you draw, even though you don't know what you want to draw. But what I like to do is I just find things that I like. If it's unicorns or mermaids, if I feel like I've done that to death, then I think about, okay, well, how can I combine a couple things so that it becomes a little bit fresher, still interesting to me. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. I want to make sure I got the right number of fingers. Because my picture is still kind of rough. You know, and just try to come up with ideas of your own. I just try to take things that I like, whether it's video games, whether it's actors or actresses. Sometimes I look up poses first. If I can't look up poses, I do love drawing faces. So I would draw a face. Sometimes I would try to mix it up. Maybe I'll combine it with something. So whether, or even like do anime. You know, maybe you'll start off with an anime picture or an anime character and then evolve them into somebody who looks more realistic. Let's see, I think I'll do thick lines on the outside and thin lines on the inside. And then I'll do thick lines. And then some of my lines will end up being colored. But at least you'll have an idea of what I'm drawing and whatnot. Now, I've only got an hour to do this, and then I have to hit the trail. Well, an hour and a half. I need to be out of here by 6:30. But I need to finish up whatever I've got to do. Let's see, so this comes from this hand here. Okay. So these are his two index fingers. This is his middle finger, his ring finger, and his pinky. This one here is his thumb. All right. And what I'm doing is, even though I wanted to draw this particular guy, this actor, Hale Appleman, I didn't want to just do the same picture that I saw, you know, that I'm using as a source image. I need to make this a little thicker. I think maybe I'll just stick with this pen here. Now this pen is not, I don't think this pen is waterproof. And my markers are water-based. So I'm going to hit this with my what do you call it? My hot air gun. And I usually use a hot air gun when I do my crayons. I melt my crayons. Can't melt, not so much. Can't melt the colored pencil, but you know, it never stopped me from trying. I'm thinking about using baby oil on this as well. Okay. And also, I was debating on whether or not I wanted to do like my favorite members of the cast as well. Okay. I gotta zoom in on his face. I just want to make sure I get some of his lines here. Let's see. And also sometimes I save up pictures, things that I find interesting, and I keep them on my Google, in my Google apps. It's the Google Drive. So I would tap into that. Every now and then the bus is able to allow me to do that, you know, to go into my Google apps, but sometimes I can't, which really sucks. Excellent. I had to zoom in a little bit. Sorry about the delay. Okay. And I'm just gonna, now I know that the Prismacolor Premier ones, they're pretty much waterproof and archival, and I use these on my shirts when I outline my shirts. They don't wash out, so be careful about dropping it onto your shirt. Unless you mean to. Okay. And I apologize if I lose my train of thought. It's really difficult to draw and speak at the same time, or speak coherently at the same time. But yeah, when I don't know what I want to draw, sometimes I tap into whatever I have as a stored up. Like I'll look at old images that I thought were pretty cool. Okay. Okay, now this I've already decided I'm going to light up. I'm going to keep my pencil lines in here only because it adds a little bit more character, and sometimes they'll just disappear on their own as I'm coloring. So right now I'm going to hit this with a blast of heat just so I can make sure that it stays in place. So I apologize for the noise. I'm going to mute this so it's not so annoying. So give me a second. Alrighty. Okay, so what that does sometimes is it curls up the paper. Before I start to color, and usually before I ink, but this ink is pretty good, it doesn't go through the other side, I throw something underneath. I am, let's see, I'm not sure if I want to color it like a Disney color where you put a color around the outside, like letting a flesh tone be. I'm trying to decide if I want to do that or if I just want to go straight out and color it. Do I want it to look cartoony? Now here's a decision I have to make. What I'm babbling about right now is, do I want to do an outline around like different parts of his face, his hands, things like that, in the color, kind of like how a Disney character is. You'll see they're outlined in that color, and then in a darker color or a similar to that color family, it's filled in. And I'm wondering if I want to do that. It does make it easy to to pull out, but if I want it to look more realistic, I don't want to outline it like that. Let me do his jawline first and see what that looks like. Okay, so this is what I'm pretty much doing, is I'm going around, and I would go around his entire area that would end up getting this color. I want it kind of thick because what I'm going to do is I'm going to tease that out. I've got a water brush, and you can use a paintbrush too, it doesn't really matter, and just trying to tease it down a bit. I kind of want the colors to be a little subtle. Okay, and I'll let that sit a little bit. Now, ultimately, like I said, I'm going to light up his hands, like, so it'll be like fire or like the spell that he's casting. So I'll end up doing that. Oops, didn't mean to do that, but that's okay. All this is going to be probably in darkness. Let's see. And it kind of gives it that watercolor look. I'm trying to decide, do I want to do... I don't want to do the outlines. I do and then I don't. Yeah, I don't think I'll do the outlines on this one. Maybe on one of the other ones I'll probably do outlines. Okay, so to do this as a watercolor, instead of dropping water onto the marker or the super tip, and I have this little section thing so I can do different colors and stuff like that. This is kind of plastic and kind of plastic coated. So I'm pretty much just going ahead and doing like a little dot, and then I'll add water to it. And I can also mix these colors, which is kind of cool too. Let's see. Maybe drop a little bit of water here. My water brush is pretty full. I don't want too much brown on it. Okay, this is just enough to get some of the shadows here in his face. And ultimately, I'm probably going to change the color of the shadows too. Maybe to the color that I'm going to use for the spell here. Now, this show is definitely not for kids. There's a lot of adult themes in it, and it comes, I believe, on the Sci-Fi Channel. And I think they're into either the 3rd or 4th season. I think it's the 4th season. And I am in love with that show. Okay, so anywhere I think it's not dark enough, I'll either add more brown, and just not mix it with too much water. And if it's still not brown enough, let me hit it with a little heat. And I apologize for the noise this is going to create. That's just to dry it really fast. Now his colors are really dark around his nose here. His upper lip here is in shadow, and I'm going to hit a little bit of that. And I'm just hitting it pretty much where I see the dark tones that match this, or as close to this as possible. Now, these markers are amazing on watercolor paper, and they seem to be doing just fine right now on this paper here. And you want to take your time when you do this. and just kind of let this thing do what it does. Let it kind of map out what it wants. You don't want to use I want to call it typing paper, but computer paper, you don't want to use that. It'll buckle like a bad dog. And you just want to take your time and get your colors straight. Now all this is just a base tone. It's nothing permanent. It's just to give me some dark tones so that when I get ready to use the colored pencils will be working some of the magic. Huh? Working magic. Ah! Okay. But I do want to kind of smooth it out a bit. So all in this area is going to be kind of like in shadow, even though the light that it's going to give off is going to pretty much hit his entire face. But you know, I'm pretty much working off of my source image here, and I'm using actually a couple images. I'm using one of a man making this picture here, and then one of his face holding a, looks like a jacket over his shoulder, and I just combined the two. And that's another thing, is like if I don't know what to draw, I'll take a couple drawings and just kind of merge them together and to make a whole nother drawing. And I do that because I have this thing about doing the same thing as someone else. I like to be just a little different. Okay, I'm going to mix a little bit of this color here. I think this is kind of like a pink tone. And I just put a little bit on here, and then I'll use my water brush to pick it up. Now the cool thing about Crayola is that it washes out really easy, so you don't really have to worry about your brushes and stuff being stained to no end. And if you're one of those people who like what is it called, Copics, this is almost a nice alternative to Copics, especially if you don't have a lot of money and you're not trying to make any money right now off of your artwork, and it's just for fun. But it's super inexpensive. I think for the supplies that I just bought, I didn't spend over $50, I don't think, on the supplies. Like the markers, I think, were about maybe $9 for the pack of 50. And then I had gotten the 100 set of color pencils for $14. The crayons, I think, were about either 9 or 10. And you'll hear that adage, you don't have to spend a lot of money or have the most expensive art supplies to make good art. It helps, but you don't have to. And I'm hoping this turns out okay. Okay, I'm going to hit this with some heat. Alrighty, and using some of these techniques, excuse me, coffee burp. Let's see, I lost my train of thought already. It'll come back to me. Kind of plan out what colors you want to use. Because we're going to be using what's it called, crayons, and I'm going to end up melting those crayons. you know, nothing has to be, you know, if I make a mistake, I can go over it with the crayons, um, and it's pretty easy to kind of fix. Nothing's set in stone is what I'm pretty much wanting to say. Now this paper isn't buckling on me, so it's doing pretty good. This is mixed media paper. It's inexpensive. I think I spent maybe $7 or $8 on it. And all these things I bought at Walmart. So you don't have to, you know, travel to an art supply store to get this stuff. Not specifically. Now you do, and I got these at Walmart. These Prismacolor Premier markers. They come in a set of 4. The only thing that I had to get from an art supply store was the paintbrush pen. You can even buy a water brush at Walmart now. I was freaking out. I'm like, oh my gosh, Walmart has stepped up their game. Okay, like right now I'm sticking with the browns. Let me see, the skin tones, and I'm just going to add a few more. Okay, put a little bit right here. Yeah, so if you are on a really strict budget, try using some of these techniques. And even if you don't have a water brush, you can always use a paintbrush and do this. You want more control over the colors, then just go ahead and do what I'm doing. Put it in a dish and put it in there. It's really easy to clean up. And if it spills, you're not going to cry about it, like Copics, which are really expensive. Copics, however you want to pronounce it. They get pretty expensive. And I only use them when I'm doing a commissioned piece. I don't use them for fun. I used to use them for practice, and then it's like I practiced the crap out of them. And that was it to that. Okay, now I know, like I said, I know that these are going to get lit up, his hands here, so I'm debating whether or not I want to even do anything to that. I want to use the opposite color that I'm going to use on here, which is going to be like a greenish tone, green and yellow, and so I'll use red highlights, red or reddish highlights. And like a lot of my images, they all have like this ugly stage. So right now we're at an ugly stage. It's not gorgeous yet, but it will get there. And now I'm going to have it where like I'm using like my color wheel here. And so I'm going to be using these shades like on his hands that are going to light up. And then I'm going to be using these shades for like the backlight and stuff like that. So, and then like in between will be like his skin tone and things like that. So like edges, things like this are going to be in red, and I could get away with doing it like this. Just hitting around the outside. And the highlights on top of his head, and then like coming down this way, it'll start to get green, the green lights. And when I use my source images, I'm not following them precisely. I just wanted to get kind of like the feel or the spirit of whatever it is that I'm working with. Let's see. This is blue, but blue kind of enhances brown. So I kind of want my browns around this edge to be kind of darker. So I'm going ahead and mixing that with blue. You'll see me do something like that with, like on that Superman picture that I did in that tutorial. I mix a lot of complementary colors with each other, and that's all that is a fancy term of colors that are on the other side of the color wheel of each other. And blue seems to make it a little darker. Brown is kind of like a warm color, or it can be a warm color. And blue is a cool color. And I think I'll use a little bit of green in his hair for that highlight, because this light is going to light up this portion of his hair. And like my Artezas, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different greens in this particular set. I have that one, this one, and the downside to these super tips is that they don't have, look at all these ridiculous amounts of green, they don't have any labels on them. So you can't tell, really. See, it just keeps coming and coming. More greens, ridiculous amounts of green. God, green is somebody's freaking favorite color, or it's just really super easy to mix. I do not freaking know. But I'm going to use like some of these darker greens, and actually let me use this lighter green as the highlight. Just want to give it a hint. And then I'll probably use a little bit of yellow, or just stick with the greens. Like this is like a greenish yellow anyway. Let's see, the next lightest green, let's try this one. This is kind of dark. Yeah, I had used these markers before, and I'm like, you know what, gotta be able to do something with these things. It's ridiculous that you have so many colors and varieties and whatnot, and everything you do comes out looking like booty because you're using the wrong paper. I didn't realize that at the time. It just kept eating up my paper. It kept falling apart. It kept scratching, and I mean, it's just like these were unreal on how much damage it could do to regular paper. So if you do decide to invest in Crayola markers, get thick paper. Watercolor paper. Watercolor paper is really cheap at Walmart. I think it's like $6 for a pad of either 20 or 50. Not sure, but it's inexpensive. And it looks amazing on that. It will not eat your paper up, and you can get away with doing what I'm doing here, which is spreading some of this love around here. Now I'm moving some of these sparingly. If you do this technique, you want to do this part first, which is the coloring with the markers first, and then go over it with your colored pencils and crayons. You want to use your colored pencils first, because crayons will scratch up. Like if you put crayon down first and then you try to go back over it with colored pencil will pick up the crayon. It'll scratch it up because it's a different type of hardness. Use your big words, Kim. Let's see. And this is just to give him a little bit of red around here, and then this is going to be like in green. Let's see, his shirt is white, but let's see, And I'm going to have tendrils, and I'm going to use the crayons to bring out the tendrils. He's got brown eyes. Okay, so now what I want to do is I'm going to dry this, and then I'm going to coat it with baby oil, because the colored pencils and the crayons glide like mad on the baby oil. So let me see, here's my heat gun. Okay, bear with me. I'm going to turn off the sound because I'm going to hit this for a while just to make sure that everybody's dry. And then I'm going to hit it again with some baby oil, and I'll be right back. Alrighty, now I'm going to hit this with some baby oil. Let me find my brush. I had it in front of me a second ago. This one is ugly. Oh, this is a good one. Okay, here's a brush. I have a container of baby oil. Okay, and I'm just going to coat this entire thing, but before I do, I'm going to get rid of this. It's going to get covered up anyway, but I don't look like I have an eraser nearby, so bump it. Okay. And see, you can barely see, you can't see any of the pencil lines, really. Okay, so let me go ahead and hit this. I don't want this to spill, because that would just be nasty. And I'm just using a brush like this, and you can reuse it over and over again. I'm coating the entire thing. Because if you leave any dry spots, it'll look like a splotchy, greasy mess. So just go ahead and coat the entire thing. It's going to change the paper a bit. It's going to colorize the paper. And it also makes the paper transparent. I usually use this technique on Bristol. Okay, and that's plenty. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit this with some hot air, and I'm going to dry it just enough so I can get ready to work on this without becoming a greasy baby oil mess. Alright. It's still like super wet, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to try to wipe some of the excess off, and I got my hairs everywhere because this is where I also comb my mess. But what the baby oil is going to do is, like I said, it's going to change the paper. It's going to make it easier for the pencils to glide across. And for something like this, I usually let it dry for up to an hour, but I don't have an hour. I have about 45 minutes, if even. Okay, so now that it's not too bad, I'm going to hit it one more time with some heat. Maybe that'll dry it, and I think I'll just work right now on his face because I like his face. Alrighty, we'll turn this off. Alrighty, so like if you don't have a hot air gun, you can always use not a curling iron, I'm so sorry, a blow dryer. And you see, I don't know if you can tell, the paper is still wet, but it also changed its color. It's now like a off-white gray color, and over time it will dry, and it will be transparent. So like if I wanted to trace something, like one of my other drawings or something like that, I could do that with these, with the paper that's like this. Okay, let me break out a couple colored pencils and see if this is at a point where I can actually start working on this. I have a white colored pencil, and what I usually do is I start off doing the highlights. Let's see, he's going to have some tinges of green in his skin from this part right here. I'm not sure if I'm going to use that right off the bat, so I'll put that away. And I'm going to stick with some of the flesh tones. For him, I have apricot. And this is cool. I'm using the 100 colored pencil set. Let me lighten myself up here. There we go. Okay, so colors, colors, colors. And let's see, I got apricot and peach. Let's see, what other tones am I going to use? I'm going to look at my source image here. Maybe a few of the pink colors. Maybe a salmon would work really well. This here is bubble, I think this is bubble gum. Nope, this is blush. Never seen that one before. 100 color set is pretty awesome. I get a lot of colors. This is cantaloupe. Oh, they must have renamed some of these. Let's see. And instead of having like duplicates of color, this is coral reef. And we'll work with some of those colors. I do want to get a couple browns out, like mahogany and a brown itself. Here's brown. Let's see. And if it's not at a workable point right now, I can always come back to it later. It'll be a little bit drier. I'm going to sandwich it. I'm going to use a little bit of tan. Okay, so let me get started. Okay, my highlights. Oh yes, it's at a good point. And you might even be able to see some of this. Okay, yeah, it pops up really great. Okay, so this is the highlights. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit all the places where I think the highlights are going to be. And your pencil may wear down really fast. I'm not putting a lot of pressure on, and it's coming off really beautifully. See, it's when stuff like this happens that makes me want to like rush home and work on stuff. So I'll tell you what, I'll see if I can work on this more when I get home. I'll probably be tired, but I will do my best. And if I'm not, I'll be up again, bright and early, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed to work on it. But at this point right here, the color pencils are coming out just nice. And this is what I expected it to do. With a paper like this, the pencils come out not unlike a Prismacolor pencil. You'll start to forget that you're working with Crayola. I guarantee you. I mean, it's like, work with it without the baby oil on it, and it's kind of like, meh. But work with it with the baby oil on it, and it is amazing. And so is Prismacolor. Prismacolor looks amazing on baby oil treated paper, and it's like butter. It's almost like painting with a pencil. You have and it smudges like a bad dog though. So wherever you want it to blend and things like that, it'll do it, but it'll also do it in other places too. So you got to be very, very careful. You don't want to use your hand to move stuff around. Like sometimes you'll get dust like this right here. You don't want to blow on it either because you'll be blowing for days. It's like it'll pick it up and it'll smudge the crap out of it. But it just looks amazing. So these are some of my highlights. I'm adding them first because I don't want to lose them. And if I do happen to lose them, I can always come back around with crayon and melt that on there. So all is not lost, especially if you feel like you want to lighten stuff up. You'll be able to do that. Like in this little area right here, I don't want it to be as bright as like a highlight up there, but I want it lighter in this particular area. That's where his cheekbone is. And I'll also demonstrate the same thing on darker toned skin with my, what's his name? Sorry, Virgil. Okay, so where do you put highlights? If you don't have a source image and you're trying to work from memory, certain places seem to always pick up the light or the shadow. Like right here picks up shadow a lot. Like right underneath the eyebrow, that's usually in shadow. Your eyes are with a ball in a socket, and that picks up a lot of shadows around here. So you'll see like definition around the eyes with that. Okay, so the closer I get to here, I start to get more of his skin tone. Light-toned people, Caucasian people, usually have color play all over. A lot of their movement of color is in the shadows. But with darker tone people, you have a really bright highlight, and a lot of the movement is in the highlight where it's lit up. Like this part right here would be like dark on a black person, like maybe it might be black even, that kind of shadow. But on lighter tone people, there's a lot of color play up in these little areas here. Whereas if this was a dark-skinned person, a lot of the color play will be up in this area. It'll make sense when you start to draw a new color and you're looking at not someone who just like goes through and throws one tone on somebody, but somebody who actually takes the time to look at skin to see how the light hits it. You'll be able to see more of how light works with dark skin. And another thing to keep in mind is that not all skins are flesh tone. You know, you'll be picking up different colors, different shadows. You can refer to your source image, or you can kind of use your imagination. But it's very rare that you'll see someone in real life uniformly colored. No one really is symmetrical. You'll never find a perfectly symmetrical face. So if you are breaking your neck trying to get your images, you know, like your eyes to be the same, you can get them similar, but in real life people, they all have different shapes to them. One eye might be wonky. If you like, one of my favorite examples is Shannon Doherty. Forget about it. Do not try to get that girl symmetrical. You will drive yourself insane. And then you'll be like, why doesn't she look like herself? Because she's not symmetrical. Yeah, a very interesting face. Check her out. Alrighty. So basically what I'm doing is I'm just filling in the areas where I think you know, looks like a particular tone. Now, if you think that it's too bright or not bright enough or too dark, mix those colors in with another color. Crayola can be very vibrant at times, and sometimes you'll just need to dull it down. I recommend using grays, blues, things like that to bring the color tone down. If that's not what you're aiming for. If you want vibrant colors, by all means stick with it. But definitely try using the complementary colors, opposite colors on the color wheel, to get the tones that you're looking for. Oh my gosh, I so want to work on this off camera as well. I am really liking how this is coming out. So this is one of the things that I would do if I don't know what I want to do, is I'd find a face that I like, and I'm almost regretting outlining because I've got this black line now. Whereas if I didn't outline, I wouldn't have had it. And it makes things look cartoony. So if you don't want your image to come off looking cartoony, don't outline. Let your tones do the talking. You know, just give yourself just enough hints in your art, like very faint. Like you see, some artists will erase some of their work in order to, you know, add their tones. Let's see, and I'm going to use a little bit of green and blue, or how about a green blue, turquoise. Let's see, this color here is aqua green. I'm going to use a little bit of this tone in some of the shadows in his skin, because it's going to be playing off of these hands right here. I've got a lot of deep shadow here, and I'm taking liberties with the skin tone. My source image is kind of brown and bluish, and I really want to play up these hands. I'm going to use a little bit more here. So anywhere I see it being a little darker, where it gets a little deeper, a little darker, I'm going to add this green. And what will happen is that, and I'm going to use a different green as well. This here is Shamrock. They just went through and just changed the names. I'm going to add greens to my colors. if you want to take the time to map out your stuff, it's really not a bad thing to do. A lot of things I do, I kind of work on the fly, just like off the seat of my pants. But had I taken a little bit more time to plan, sometimes my artwork comes out a little different. In the highlights, I'm going to use yellow because I'm going to be using green and yellow down here. And I'm going to throw a little bit more here. And I kind of want these colors to mix in with his skin. And I'm going to get a little bit more subtle with some grays and maybe bring back a little bit of brown. Okay, so I've got about a half an hour left. About 25 minutes. And I'm going to dull some of this up with the brown. But a good color to use to dull it up is also gray. Gray is a really good one to dull things up with. Let's see. And just put the colors in where you see them in your source image. And then you'll even see like subtle colors. And go into your highlights bit. Also, another thing I'm going to be using is, oh, this is beautiful. I'm going to be using some blending stubs. But before I use my blending stubs, I want to get a good amount of color onto the paper itself before I start to blend and rub and whatnot. Now I want this green to kind of mix in with his skin tone. Alrighty, and then like right here, I'm trying to decide if I want to use green or if I want to use yellow, or maybe both, because right here is going to be picking up whatever lights are hitting down here, or projecting from down here. But like I always say is that Bristol paper is like your best friend. When you want to do this technique. I mean, it looks all right on this paper, but Bristol is amazing. Definitely will always be my first choice. Okay, so I'm just bringing in some of the colors that I see. I'm going to also be using a little bit of brown, either brown or green. I don't want to use black, or maybe even purple. What I want to do is I want to enhance my browns. Oops, oops, oops. I don't want to drop my pencils. Oh, okay. I want to find something else to put these in so I have them when I get home already, instead of sprawled all across my desk, but that's okay. I can always get them again. Let's see, white is my go-to. I want to make sure my highlights are good. It's really light-ish up in this area. If I know that I'm going to be blending light tones in a certain area, I'll just go ahead and lay down a little bit there. and then start working it through. I should turn on my overhead light just to give me a little bit more light. I'll do that right now. I got 20 minutes. There we go. It gives me just a little bit more light to work with. Okay, so now I want to dull up this a little bit. I'm either going to use, I think I'll use a little bit of this blue-green and a gray. Or actually, I'll just use a gray. Let me see if I can find a gray. Ooh, lots of colors. Love it, love it. Now I found that these guys are not that great with, let's see, this is ash. I'll try ash. Let's see, let me put some of my pencils away. Okay. I'm going to use a little bit of this ash color. Now I want this green to be kind of subtle, so I'm going to go over it with the ash as well. And I think I want to go over it a little bit with blue. Yeah, gray is really good for dulling up your colors just a bit. Just to muddy it up a bit so it's not like, I'm Crayola! You know, it doesn't just scream it. Okay. Alright, let me get my blending stuff. What did I do with you? Here we are. Alright, these guys you can also buy at Walmart too, pack of 10. For about, I think, either $3 or $4. I can't remember. I should really jot down the pricings next time I go shopping for art supplies. Okay, and so also, with this kind of color treated paper, you can blend. Oh my gosh, you can blend. Because usually these pencils are dry and you can't blend like this. And you could also dip this in baby oil to get it to blend even further. Now this is also a double-sided sword because if you wipe it like that, it's going to blend that way. You're going to have color everywhere, whether you want it there or not. And another thing that I like about this is that it seems like it's overcoming the issue that I had with the texture of the paper. Texture of the paper is kind of annoying to me because I want it smooth. And it's like, well, why didn't you buy smooth paper, Kim? They didn't have it at Walmart. Silly voice that I'm talking to myself. Yeah, so I just bought what I could carry with me every day and just have some fun with. Yeah, I'm going to have the greasiest sketchbook ever and love it. Okay. Alrighty. Yep, this right now is at a perfect place for these colored pencils. It's not, the paper's not too wet. The colors are still gliding. Um, it's just making some magic for me. Okay, now this I'm going to darken up just a bit. I'm not happy with the green on his skin, but it'll make more sense once I finally do the hands. Okay, I might not even use the crayons. I might not need to. But I'm just kind of curious. I really want to see what they look like on here. So now I just want more of a skin tone and some of the browns. Okay. Now what I like about these colored pencils is you have a lot more control. Crayons are like a blunt instrument. I mean, it's like you put it down, but you can't really get the details you want out of it. Whereas with a colored pencil, you can really sharpen it to a fine point and get those colors that you really desire. What do you desire, master? I want a good picture, darling. Your wish is my command. Alright. Getting... Okay. Now this is supposed to be dark tone. This is all dark here. And then it comes into a light. And right here is kind of like where he has kind of like a 5 o'clock shadow. And that's where the grays come back in. Not a mustache, just a tone here. And just keep referring back to your source image. And I think what's really cool about going over it with, or putting on that base with the markers, is that it just gives me a little extra. And I'm also going to go back over it with markers and even blend them together, markers with the pencils. Gives you a darker, richer tone. And just pay attention to your source image, that way you don't lose your highlights. Lovely. Okay. I'll just blend some of this stuff down. Yeah, now I'm kicking myself because I've got like dark lines where I want highlights. So, how do I overcome that? Just add a little bit of highlight to that, and hopefully I can get rid of it or mask it or something. Okay. And I want to bring back some of his eyebrow. And just, oops, wrong ones. That's brown. There it is. I'm going to bring back some of my lines. And I'm just applying a little bit of this dark tone where I think I've lost it. I'm trying to pay attention to some of the subtleties in the shadows, where it is darker in some places, lighter in others. And those little subtleties, little subtle changes in tone really make an interesting picture. It gives it more depth, I think. But if you can, try to stay away from black as much as possible, because black is overwhelming. It does have its moments where it'll work well, but if you can get away with using a complementary tone, do it. It adds a little bit more richness than what a black can do. A black is very dramatic, and if you're trying to be subtle with some of your tones, it's going to overwhelm. And it may not be what you're looking for. So just try to be very sparingly with, use black very sparingly. Use it only in black areas. I mean deep dark black areas, if you have to have them. And make sure that you wipe off your pencil if you're not trying to dull up colors, especially your white. If you use white to lighten, and while you're blending. Alrighty, yeah, like right here, I wish I wouldn't have outlined that. Okay, now around right in here in his eyes, his eye bags, I guess you can say, they're dark. And I just wanted to kind of make that green just a little subtle, very subtle, but still there. Okay, and this side is like warmed up. Okay. And where it's going to be closest to the light, is going to be green. And then once I start to finalize it, I'll start adding green tones to different areas on here. All right. Yeah, but if you're looking to do more of a realistic skin tone, don't outline. Don't outline in with black. I'm sorry, with marker, because it just takes over, and you can't cover it up. Especially if you're especially in the highlights. You can do it where you know there's going to be shadow, but in the highlights, it's a killer. Okay, I'm gonna throw. Okay. No. One of the good things about crayons is that it'll cover a lot of area really super fast. And let's see. And same thing with marker. It'll cover up a lot of area really fast. Let's see. Trying to decide, do I want to do the jackets? I'm trying to decide, do I want to do all of this first and then do the hands? Because if I put the crayon on the hands, I'm going to be doing kind of like this smoky tendril type of thing, and I may impact this. Let's see, so we've got, I think I'll put him, trying to choose my colors here, and I'm not using the what he's got on right there in the picture. So okay, this is going to be the color of the hands. So I either want to use this color here for the jacket, or I want to use this color here. If I use these colors, let's see, I do love blue. He's got blue. He's actually using these colors right here in his picture, in my source image. I think he could rock some purple. And that'll blend in with this. But if I get him wearing like a red, that'll make this pop out even further. So if I do all this in red, it'll make the green pop out. So maybe a reddish tone. I think the purple will work. Like a reddish purple. Let's see. Let's see what I've got sitting out right now. Before I dip into the big thing of color. Let's see, this is not a bad one. This is red violet. Ooh. Okay, that's kind of passionate. Alright. So I'm going to go ahead and I think in different places where I've touched it, it looks like it's already started to smudge. But that's okay. And then I think I'll give it a hint. I'm going to try to avoid some of this hand stuff here, just a little. Because wherever this is, it's going to pretty much take over. Let's see, and the vest ends about right here. I don't want to get too much in here. I think I'll do it just very lightly around the edges here. And before I apply heat, I want to make sure, oh, I almost got to go. It's almost time to go, so let me hurry up. I might have to let this be my stopping point. Okay, I gotta go put my eyes in, gotta comb my hair. I already brushed my teeth. I'm trying to go over the list of things I gotta do before I leave. So I'll try to pop on tonight, and if I don't pop on tonight, I will definitely be on tomorrow morning, bright and early and bushy-tailed. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. I will get them. All right. Okay, so I'm gonna leave this open because this is where all the wonderful little colors are gonna go. And thank you so much for watching. Okay, here's where we are so far. When I come back, I'm going to add more crayon to his hair. I'm going to make it more brown so you can see the brown. It doesn't just look like Christmas is happening up in his hair. Because what I do to one area, I got to do to another. And I want it to look, I wanted the colors to look a little bit more subtle once I do that. So again, thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe to catch more and to get any alerts. And I'll be drawing more in my book. And I'll share that with you either tonight or later on tomorrow, okay? Again, thank you again for watching, and I'm Kim Pinkney, and thank you for coming to my channel.